cast their vote and are often disappointed. And youth find it difficult to find their way through the intricacies of power. They, like we all, share a common aspiration to have what should be theirs as a democratic birthright, and that is to have equal access to power and to representation. This is, of course, a complex issue that has to do with legislation, with party regulation, resources, internal political decision, all of which is certainly not within the competences of a development partners like European, like ECOWAS. But since our establishment, we had the possibility to support, thanks to the EU and to some member states, several member countries of ECONEC, such as Burkina Faso, Benin, Cape Verde, Ghana, and Senegal. Since June 2017, we had the chance to support Nigeria Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, in the many initiatives and activities it has launched to close the gaps in inclusivity. We are just this week completing a half-hour documentary on inclusivity entitled On the Margins, in which women, young people, and PWDs and internally displaced people from around the country air their views on barriers to participating and competing in political life. We also have produced numerous multimedia clips and short films to feed into the voter education drive, with a particular focus on disadvantaged groups. ECOWAS helped in strengthening INEC and state-level gender desk officers and facilitated development of research and comparative studies on persons with disabilities and internally displaced persons. ECOWAS will continue, of course, to support these programs, not just here in Nigeria, but across the whole region. I would also like to briefly give credit to the European Union and its member states, and notably Germany, to support and help us in implementing partners in this and in the many other tasks that we are able to conduct here in Nigeria and over the whole region. Finally, I would like to wish you all the best in your deliberation and sharing of ideas and best practice, and this is surely the most direct pathway to future action. And ECONEC, with the Election Commission and of the 15 countries of ECOWAS, this is a formidable platform for that, and we are very, very glad to be involved in this work. Very much, thank you.
Include ECONEC members and various political stakeholders in the electoral process, for the sole purpose of exploring challenges and opportunities required in the process of promoting electoral inclusivity, which is a cardinal factor in advancing democratic culture. The act of bringing together here today these wise persons from various sections of our society to discuss the issue of participation of women, youth, and persons living with disabilities in all aspects of the electoral process is indeed a positive step that portrays the wisdom and maturity of ECONEC and ECOWAS as a region in seeing that time is now ripe for opening doors to allow members of the less fortunate group to participate in the electoral affairs. The holding of this symposium and the theme that goes with it need be taken with all the seriousness it deserves. Elections are serious matters which require meticulous considerations and collective decisions on how best to conduct them. It is for this reason that ECONEC has come up with this idea of convening this symposium. Even we in SADC region do not view elections as mere rituals to be performed or celebrated in every 5 years. We pay great attention to views submitted to us by election observers and other stakeholders. Political inclusivity is one of the good recommendations advanced by election stakeholders that has been enshrined in the electoral laws of some of the SADC countries, my country being one. I therefore wish to emphasize that the theme of this symposium is relevant and fundamental and goes to the core of one of the cardinal democratic tenets of the electoral process. We may here wish to remind ourselves of the fact that the issue of inclusivity of the type of persons aforementioned has long been advocated by AU in some of its charters. Some countries in the SADC region have already ventured in adopting this phenomenon in their constitutions. Time has come for ECOWAS to adopt it. You are never late. I now wish to take this opportunity to commend INEC, ECONEC, and as well as well-wishers for ensuring that this important event takes place. I hasten to add that we wish you a successful 6th ECOWAS network of electoral commissions, General Assembly. I also bring you a note of greetings from my commission, Zanzibar Electoral Commission, and also greetings from the leadership of the Electoral Commission of SADC region. I wish you successful discussion and best of luck. Thank you.
Thank you. Recognize the representative of the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria in the person of the Secretary to the Federal Government, the representative of the Senate President, the representative of the Speaker of the House of Assembly, and of course the President of ECONEC, Chair of the Independent National Electoral Commission of Nigeria. Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank ECOWAS and ECONEC for inviting me to this important symposium. For the United Nations, electoral processes are central to preventing conflicts and sustaining peace in the sub-region and beyond. I'm therefore particularly pleased to be here with you today. Permit me also to express my gratitude to the electoral unit of ECOWAS for their efforts to enhance the participation of women, youth, and persons with disability in electoral processes in the West Africa region. This platform for dialogue and experience sharing among chairpersons of ECONEC member commissions, gender, youth, politicians, civil society organizations, international development partners, and the UN will go a long way to enhance inclusive governance, which is at the root of our collective search for sustainable peace and development. Let me underline that as we grapple in our various roles with the need to adapt to the different realities of our respective contexts regarding resources, timing, and location, we should always remember that electoral institutions are expected to conform to some basic universal principles and practices of governance and human rights, including the rights of women and persons of disabilities enshrined in the Charter of the United Nations. These cannot and should not be compromised. Let us be constantly reminded that elections are not an end in themselves, but a means to delivering inclusive and good governance to the generality of the population. I am confident that the deliberations of this symposium will go a long way towards enhancing the prospects for peaceful, inclusive, participative, and credible elections in this sub-region. UNOWAS will continue to work with ECOWAS to this end. ECONEC can indeed continue to rest assured of the collaboration of the United Nations in this regard, particularly through the Office for West Africa and the Sahel. We appreciate greatly the leadership of Professor Yakubu, and we hope that ECONEC will continue to grow from strength to strength. 2020 will be a year of elections as Burkina Faso, Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, Guinea, Niger, and Togo hold presidential elections. We remain confident that these ECONEC member states and the sharing of experiences that goes on in ECONEC to maintain the high standards for elections in West Africa shall be maintained in all these elections. Once again, I congratulate ECONEC for the great strides made over the years and for today's event. Thank you.
Your presence here demonstrates that commitment to continued democratic reform, and I think that is really very reassuring. Allow me also to say that it's always an enormous pleasure to be amidst some of the most true and stern champions of democracy on this entire planet, namely the chairman of the independent electoral commissions around West Africa. I have truly come to admire the work that you are doing, and that is certainly the case here in Nigeria, exemplified by our host, Professor Yakubu. We know that quite often you do your work under very difficult circumstances. So this is also why I'm very proud, I must say, that the EU is supporting almost, if not all, of the institutions that are represented here today. And of course, the symposium itself is a case in point where, together with ECOWAS, and I recognize the presence of ECOWAS President and the Director here today also, supporting ECONEC. And we do that knowing that, of course, democracy should never be taken for granted. Democracy is never static and needs to be nourished. And that is the case in Europe, for sure. It's the case in Africa, and in fact, everywhere. Now, coming to the symposium, I must say that I feel particularly pleased that you have selected this very subject of inclusivity. You could have chosen so many other matters. But you could arguably say that the inclusivity is fundamentally an issue of survival of democracy by the end of the day. It's about legitimacy, and it's about providing that voice to all the people of our nations. Now, if that inclusivity is not provided, then we risk undermining our democracies by the end of the day, and the continued stability and economic growth of our countries and regions. And that is why when looking at youth, looking at the participation of women, looking at people with disabilities, and as eloquently said by one of the previous speakers, also the marginalized poor people, people with disabilities, people coming from IDP's situations, if we don't seek to have a full inclusive participation of these people, then fundamentally, by the end of the day, we risk undermining the very political platforms that we have created with such sacrifice by many key politicians. Now, looking at the recent experience of elections in Nigeria, I do see a lot of hope moving forward. There are some positive takeaways, and there are some more negative ones. On the positive side, we did see the passing of the Not Too Young to Run bill, allowing younger people to participate in the political processes. We did see the passing of bills also for people with disabilities, and I must say that INEC in particular championed seeing new and innovative ways of having participation of people with disabilities. On the other hand, we also saw some very serious shortcomings and challenges, looking at, as it was mentioned by the Deputy Speaker just before, the rather low, if not disturbingly low, participation and election of women in the elections. So we should not undermine the challenge before us. And we should not sleep on any laurels here, because if we do not take fundamentally serious the kind of challenges that we are facing, then we will overlook some of the action that is needed to be taken. And I have one plea for you here. Please don't consider this matter of inclusivity as something for international community and projects to handle by the end of the day. Somebody said, maybe a little bit provocatively, that politics is too important to leave to politicians alone. And maybe I'm not the right one to say this, but I will say it nevertheless. Inclusivity in democratic processes is far too important to leave to the international community and projects alone. This is about your policies, it's about your visions, it's about building real change. And that a change agenda takes supporting exactly that. It takes being all hands on deck, and it takes full participation, and above all, political will. And that is why I feel so reassured this morning, listening to the speeches of the representatives of the National Assembly, committing themselves to real reform. And let me say that as one final remark, that it is so vital not to wait until it is too late. There is a dilemma, if you wish, of democratic reform, that when it is most needed, which is most often right after the elections, there is quite often not the necessary political will. And when it becomes possible, quite often right immediately before the elections, then it's too late. So it's good to have the representative here of the president. It's good to have the National Assembly representatives here committing to injecting that sense of urgency into the political reform processes. Please count on the European Union to support you in those endeavors, but as I said, as always, building on your leadership. So thank you very much. Thank you to the leadership of Professor Yakubu, to INEC, and to all the representatives here for putting this very important matter on the agenda. Thank you very much.
President Muhammadu Buhari, President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, ably represented by His Excellency Mustapha, the Secretary to the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and all other excellencies on the high table widely recognized. First, permit me to lend my voice to Professor Yakub to welcome our guest to Abuja, the center of unity and the seat of ECOWAS institution. In view of the growing call for more inclusive electoral processes that create chances for all sections of our population, I'm pleased to note that this gathering of experts and practitioners will carefully examine and reflect on the issues in order to profile pertinent recommendations. I have no doubt that the varied nature of your background, orientations, and views will afford us comprehensive discussion of all the pertinent issues and ultimately provide a scalable blueprint for ensuring that elections in West Africa become more and more inclusive and reflect the aspiration of all strata of our population. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, identifying the need to create useful synergies among electoral administrators from across member states culminated in the formation of ECONEC, ECOWAS Network of Electoral Commission, in February 2008, as a forum for all the Electoral Commission members to discuss and share best example and as a way of experience sharing. I'm happy to say here that ECONEC, under the leadership of Professor Mahmoud Yakub, has been a helpful partner of the ECOWAS Commission in pursuit of electoral assistance mandate to our member states. With the support of ECONEC, we have witnessed a significant improvement in the way elections are organized and conducted in our region. On many occasions, we have drawn expertise from ECONEC to assist member states holding election. One example that readily comes in mind is the role that the IT expert from INEC Nigeria played in cleaning up the voters' registers in Liberia ahead of the runoff presidential elections in December 2017. ECONEC's advocacy on behalf of its member has also been noteworthy, contributing significantly to averting a political impasse in Guinea-Bissau, when it lobbied the federal government of Nigeria to donate biometric voter registration equipment that enable the conduct of legislative elections.
All existing protocols, but to recognize my learned colleague, Barrister Mustapha, who is representing His Excellency the President. But distinguished members of the high table, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I bring you warm greetings from His Excellency Jean-Claude Cassibrou, President of the ECOWAS Commission, who is absent due to circumstances beyond his control. I'd like to thank the President of the ECOWAS Network of Electoral Commissions, ECONEC, for inviting me to address the ECONEC Symposium on promoting inclusivity in the electoral process across West Africa. Many of you are aware that I am privileged to be the first female to hold the position of Vice President of the ECOWAS Commission. Thank you. I hope and pray that I will be succeeded by a woman, or better still, that a member state will actually nominate the first female president of the ECOWAS Commission in March 2022, inshallah. Mr. Chairman, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I'm very pleased to learn that ECONEC as an institution is growing day by day, supported by technical and financial partners whose representatives are present here today, and that it is constantly seeking to build synergies with the ECOWAS Commission in order to achieve the common goals of both institutions. Mr. Chairman, under your leadership, ECONEC has recorded a number of significant achievements over the last 2 years. This symposium is one such achievement. Through the convening of this event, ECONEC has provided a platform for all of us present here to reflect on the growing calls for the greater participation and representation of women, youth, and persons with disability in politics. National elections in West Africa represent golden opportunities for such inclusive participation under electoral processes that can not only be perceived as free, fair, and transparent and peaceful, but that are actually conducted in the same manner. I'd like to take this opportunity to recognize the distinguished participants who have graced this momentous occasion with their presence. They've actually been named, so I don't want to repeat it, but this gathering therefore shows that we're all determined to engage in politics and conduct our national elections differently going forward. Mr. Chairman, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, in our region of approximately 320 million people, with 52% of the total population being female and 64% made up of people below the age of 25, there are still glaring challenges to inclusive political participation. Recent studies and current statistics affirm the underrepresentation of women and other marginalized groups at all levels of governance, and particularly in political decision-making. While some countries are doing better than others, however, generally speaking, it appears that in spite of all the pleas for parity and inclusivity in political participation and in decision-making, ECOWAS member states are yet to sufficiently mobilize women, youth, and persons living with disability for inclusive participation in the electoral process and for equal representation. Challenges in ensuring equal access to all eligible citizens, regardless of their background, orientation, gender, and physical conditions, still remain at different levels. We must remain mindful that inclusive participation in political processes leads to sustainable peace and stability in the West African region. I'd like to take this opportunity to highlight some of these challenges or barriers and proffer some solutions at the same time, if you permit me. First, the legal framework for politics and elections in many places needs to be reviewed to enable greater participation and representation for women, youth, and persons with disabilities. This can be achieved through affirmative action policies or laws which provide for a quota system for the representation of specific groups in society. We see this in legislation in Zambia, Rwanda, Uganda, and South Africa. They have clear examples of a quota system. They also have the reservation of seats for women or the nomination of women from each region as a member of parliament, which is the case in Swaziland. In some instances, gender parity clauses are enshrined in national constitutions. Second, the seemingly or perceived lack of democracy within political parties is a serious barrier to equal representation. To overcome this, political parties can be required under the law to position female candidates on their parity lists through a quota system that is submitted to electoral bodies ahead of the elections. This has been done in Kenya, Burundi, and Senegal. This also holds true for the youth and persons with disability. Third, violence in the political arena, especially gender-based violence, both verbal and physical, also impedes female participation. To address the issue of violence, political parties must sign non-violence pacts which must clearly protect female candidates ahead of elections. In addition, appropriate action should be taken against violators or perpetrators of violence in general, especially gender-based violence, to serve as a deterrent to others. Fourth, and most important of all, women's groups and female voters in general must be encouraged to support qualified female candidates and must not yield to the pull-me-down syndrome that is often associated with women. Women's groups can volunteer to encourage women not only to register as voters, but also to vote. We can also provide civic education to other women, but most of all, we must provide them with a greater understanding of the electoral process and cycle and sensitize them about the power of their votes. This holds true for the youth and persons living with disability. Fifth, it is widely accepted that access to basic or higher education for all is still a recurring problem in some of our countries. Female literacy rates as low as 35% in some places is affecting the participation and representation of women in politics. However, this should not be a deterrent or an impediment to women's participation in politics. In some countries, parliamentary and local council sessions are held in local languages, such as Kinyarwanda in Rwanda, Kirundi in Burundi, and Kiswahili in Kenya, Tanzania, and Zanzibar. Sixth, female candidates must be given support by their own parties, CSOs, meaning civil society organizations, and the media to prepare for elected positions. Support in the development of their communication skills, especially public speaking and interview skills, as well as their preparation of their campaign manifestos can be very helpful. Seventh, in some countries, social and religious barriers are working against inclusive participation and representation. In this regard, traditional and religious leaders should work closely with governments, lawmakers, CSOs, and political parties to promote inclusive participation at all levels of national elections. Eighth, the increasingly important role of money in politics and its corollary on equal access to financial resources has a direct impact on the representation of female youth and persons with disability. In this regard, political parties must be encouraged to lower the fees for female youth and persons with disabilities who are candidates for a period of time in order to achieve inclusiveness. Ninth, the necessity for more civic education and greater awareness of citizens' rights and the need to access information during elections, as stated above, is very important if we are to achieve inclusiveness in our electoral processes in West Africa. Lastly, women should sum up the courage to lead and should not be afraid of losing an election. They can always, or we can always, learn lessons and rebrand ourselves to run for office more successfully in the future. It is the only way we can transform the political landscape in our region and change the narrative in West Africa's political arena. In the words of former President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, who is my mentor and former boss, I quote, "If your dreams do not scare you, they are not big enough." End of quote. And that is to the women. Mr. Chairman, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to conclude by expressing the hope that the ensuing discussions and exchanges between elections administrators, politicians, experts, scholars, stakeholders, and legislators will produce useful recommendations and action plans for the ECOWAS sub-region. I believe that ECONEC, through this symposium, would have contributed to creating awareness and building knowledge and understanding for the increased participation and representation of women, youth, and persons living with disability. Let me reiterate once again on behalf of His Excellency Jean-Claude Cassibron, President of the ECOWAS Commission, and I, that ECONEC can be assured of the ECOWAS Commission's full, continued, and unwavering support. But before ending, you made a plea about the logistics depot, which is in my home country, Sierra Leone. Lunga is very close to my heart. I want to assure you that we are in phase 2. The second phase, Nigeria has very generously sent us a Lieutenant Colonel Bashir, who is going to be the head of the Lunga depot, who is being supported by a major from the Republic of Sierra Leone Armed Forces. So hopefully the depot would become operational in the month of August. The second phase is starting, I believe, largely through the efforts of the Commissioner for Administration, Commissioner Tule. The second phase would commence in August and September, I believe. Thank you very much for your kind attention, and thank you for inviting me.
The high table, distinguished guests, and dear participants, good morning. And on behalf of, thank you, Osiwa, for joining us. On behalf of the Secretariat, ECONEC Secretariat, I'll just say that we are seizing this opportunity to present 2 publications by the ECONEC Secretariat. The Honorable Chairman spoke about it, is the study on the cost of election. And the second one is a publication on activities in support of credible election, 2 years activities, 2017, 2019. For us, about the study, it has been a major project, journey that started in February 2018. So I'll say this is a milestone or an end of a journey that has been very interesting, and one and a half year journey that took us to the various countries mentioned by the chair. We conducted this project, this study, with 3 key ideas in mind: rationalizing cost of elections, sharing resources across the region, showing solidarity among ECONEC members, and also the idea of accountability in managing election. We cannot say that we have succeeded until the public have read and appreciated the report. So the report is presented here. Nonetheless, we believe that it's one step further in building knowledge in the region. We would like just to thank the partners, Osiwa, Open Society of the Initiative for West Africa, who we funded this project fully. The GIZ that supports us for the validation of the study, and the publication was also funded by Osiwa. Just to round up, thank you for steering committee, Honorable Chairman, my colleagues, advisors to the chair, Professor Bolade, who did the proofreading for English version, Professor Kuna, who also supported us. Thank you for all this support. I'll call on Osiwa to make a statement. Thank you very much.
The Republic of Nigeria, ably represented by the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, all other protocols duly observed. On behalf of the Open Society Initiative for West Africa, OSIWA, I bring greetings to this very important gathering. They say success has many friends, ECONEC has been doing a fantastic job in the region, and because they are doing this fantastic job, we always find every excuse to remind people of our relationship with ECONEC since 2008. And so we've been working with ECONEC, we've been funding ECONEC since 2008 because we believe in the power of shared solidarity and shared learning. And the work ECONEC is doing is helping the region, is promoting democracy and supporting the quality of our elections. The project we supported on the cost of election is one of the many ways we are hoping to provoke some conversation about what we believe is the unsustainable cost of election in the region. Election is one of those things that speak to the sovereignty of a country, and is sometimes a bit disconcerting when countries are not able to fund their own election. And so that calls into question the whole idea of the sovereignty and autonomy of that country if they'll have to rely on foreign help to do the elections. And we believe that taking a look at the cost of election, finding creative ways to reduce the cost, not just for the election management body, but even for the politicians who are part of it, will not only improve the quality of election, will not only open up the system for inclusivity, but will also ensure that there's a level playing ground for everybody who is involved. And perhaps by extension, we have a democracy that is not dependent on who has money, but on who has good ideas. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for your time and for being here, and once again reiterate our commitment to continue working and supporting ECONEC, as we all hope that in years to come, we can export this ECONEC model to other parts of the world. Elections will become something routine and not something that will give us heartache whenever we hear it's coming. Thank you for your time and have a good deliberation.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have with me 3 books but 2 publications. One is the English version of the study on the cost of elections, the other one is the French version. And then we have a book documenting the activities of the outgoing steering committee of ECONEC over the last 2 years, 2017 to 2018. On the program, there is a formal presentation, and I wish to invite His Excellency the President to please formally present. We're not launching. It's only going to be formally presented to the public. I assure you that each and every person here, including the media, will get a copy of the publications. So it is my pleasure actually to take copies to the representative of the President and members of the High Table so that we can all stand and raise it, and then we proceed from there. And thank you very much.
Distribute the books, please. The ushers.
Sorry. Excuse me, sorry. They're here, sir. Help with these books now. To start with.
One minute. Thank you very much.
the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, very ably represented by Mr. Barrister Boss Mustapha, Secretary of the Government of the Federation.
I am in challenge. Yeah, well, some of us are vertically indoors. Let me take the liberty to acknowledge, even in absence, the President of the Senate, who was ably represented by the Senator Kabir Gaya, and also the Honorable Speaker of the House of Representatives, represented by the Deputy Speaker of the House, members of the National Assembly here present, the President of ECONEC and Chairman of INEC, the representative of the Secretary General of the United Nations and head of the United Nations Office for West Africa and the Sahel, the Vice President of ECOWAS, Your Excellency, head of the EU delegation to Nigeria, members of the ECONEC steering committee and other heads of electoral management bodies, national commissioners and recs of INEC and other members, states here present, heads of EXEC, GIZ, OSIWA and other development partners, directors, staff of INEC, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, members of the press. It gives me great pleasure to address this meeting of election managers and experts from the West African sub-region and beyond. ECOWAS network of electoral commissions, ECONEC, being a platform for mutual assistance in the promotion of credible elections through experience sharing, peer learning, and capacity building, brings out the best electoral standards and practices in the ECOWAS sub-region. It is significant to note that the 6th Biennial General Assembly of ECOWAS Network of Electoral Commissions opens with a symposium on inclusivity. I am glad to note that among the speakers at this symposium are some of the youngest female members of parliament from different countries in our sub-region. It is equally noteworthy that persons with disabilities, among them a member of parliament, are also actively participating as speakers. This is very encouraging in our steady progress in ensuring that all segments of our society have a choice or have a voice in the management of public affairs, especially through the democratic process. It is also an indication that in spite of the progress achieved so far, more needs to be done by governments through legislation, by political parties through affirmative action in the nomination of candidates for election, and by all stakeholders through unrelenting advocacy for greater inclusion of all segments of society in the democratic and electoral processes. It is for this reason that before the last general election in Nigeria, I assented to a constitutional amendment bill that reduced the age required of a candidate to contest for some elective offices. This followed the strong but peaceful advocacy by young men and women around the slogan of "not too young to run," as the bill passed by the National Assembly was popularly called. On that historic occasion of signing the bill into law on 31st of May 2018, I hosted young persons from all the states of the Federation. It is gratifying to see some of them here today, and even more gratifying to note that many young men and women were elected to our national and state houses of assembly in Nigeria as a direct result of this proactive campaign. I want to assure you that this is just the beginning. We should continue to ensure that not only the youth, but other categories of citizens, such as persons living with disabilities and those internally displaced for a variety of reasons, are integrated into the electoral process in Nigeria in particular, and other countries in our sub-region in general. In doing so, we will continue to support democratic consolidation in the sub-region. One way of doing so is for the election management bodies to take the lead through peer support. I have followed with keen interest the efforts of ECONEC in this regard. In the last 2 years, ECONEC, under the leadership of the Nigerian Electoral Body Chairman, has been a strong advocate for Nigeria's bilateral electoral assistance to countries in the sub-region based on need. Within the logistics support to Sierra Leone, deployment of experts from INEC on the request of ECOWAS and the United Nations to assist in cleaning up the voters' register in Liberia ahead of the presidential runoff election in 2017, and the provision of voter registration equipment to Guinea-Bissau, which facilitated the conduct of parliamentary election in March this year. I want to assure you of Nigeria's continued assistance, because credible election in our sub-region is not only good for democracy and periodic elections, it is also good for overall sub-regional stability. We cannot allow the failure of the political process to destabilize our countries to the extent that regional military intervention becomes inevitable, as it is unfortunately still the case in the sub-region. With the successful conduct of parliamentary elections in Guinea-Bissau in March this year, the next big step is the presidential election. I urge ECONEC to continue to work with ECOWAS by engaging all stakeholders in the country for a successful presidential election scheduled for 24th of November 2019 that will restore stability and eventually facilitate the withdrawal of troops. Before I conclude, let me register Nigeria's appreciation to the development partners for their support to electoral and democratic processes in our sub-region. Let me also express our appreciation to the United Nations through the Special Representative of the Secretary General and Head of the United Nations Office for West Africa and the Sahel, His Excellency Muhammadu Ibn Chambers, who has been such a pillar of support to peace, security, and good governance in our sub-region at the diplomatic level. On this note, it is my pleasure to declare this symposium and the 6th General Assembly of the ECOWAS Network of Electoral Commissions, ECONEC, open to the glory of man, to the glory of God, and for the benefit of mankind. I wish you successful deliberations. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Mucho obrigado. For those of you that are visiting Nigeria, you have come severally. But let me urge you as you engage in this symposium in the next 2 days. Take time to enjoy and savor the beauty of our federal capital, Abuja, and also engage our people so that when you return home, you will take with you the warmth of our hospitality and the beauty of our people and our culture. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. It doesn't appear as if we appreciate his patience and being here. Please do not appreciate it. On behalf of ECONEC, let us say a big thank you to you, to the President of the Senate, to the Speaker of the House of Reps, to the GIZ, to ECOWAS, to the EU, to the UN, and also to the Chief Justice. So let us say a big thank you to you all. With that, we'll come to the end of this formal opening ceremony. I appreciate you all for your patience and for your understanding during last session.